non-exposed group, and you follow them over time to check for occurrence of the outcome of interest. And then the case control studies is the opposite. You start with the outcome. Does somebody have breast cancer or not? Then you look back to see what could they have been exposed to that led to that breast cancer. Are we together? Yes. Great. So just to go in a little bit more detail, so I've talked about descriptive studies, the ones at the top there. They are not that great, but let us not discount them. Because when it came to HIV, how it was first thought, like how people first thought that there could be an issue, is that there was a case series describing pneumonia among homosexual men. So this case of an unusual pneumonia among homosexual men now brought people to start thinking about, could there be a disease that's spreading amongst homosexual men that's causing immunodeficiency and leading to this pneumonia. So let us not discount that case series have nothing to offer. Sometimes they are the initial thought that brings us to start thinking about, oh, there could be something going on over here. So I got this in our family WhatsApp group. Did you also receive it in your family WhatsApp groups? And it caused fire that day. Eh? So Kikuyu elders have said we should ban diapers, and this is why. I'm reading from the article. So the Kikuyu community, they called it Kiama. Have I said it right? No, I haven't. Okay. Has called upon the government to ban diapers as it is ruining children's reproductive system. So Kimando Kiambu Sub-County Chairman, while speaking at a school in the village where over 100 initiates graduated into manhood, said that during the circumcision process, they were shocked to see that the reproductive organs of most of the boys had shrunk. So they're going to cut, and the guy is like, what am I cutting? So I want us to imagine that this comes to us, that we have a CEC Health who, because, things can come from the community. It's becoming a big thing that parents are complaining. And even in the article, if you read it a bit more, they even have quotes from mothers, from what, that diapers should be banned, people should go back to using nappies, these diapers are messing up our sons. So let's imagine that now the question has come to us. The CEC Health is asking you because a community is causing a lot of fracas. And I want us to design observational studies to gain more insight as to could this thing really be true. And for this purpose, I want us to focus only on ecological, cross-sectional, cohort, and case control. Sawa. So we're going to be divided into groups. You'll have 10 minutes each, 10 minutes just to brainstorm. The guys for ecological, how would you design the study? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And what are some of the things you must take note of as you're designing the study? Some things you need to look out for. I feel the best way sometimes to learn is when you do. Yeah? So when you start thinking about it, then you'll see. You become experts in ecological or cohort or case control within the next 10 minutes. So we'll count number 1 to 8. case control. Number 5, ecological. 6, cross-sectional. 7, cohort. 8, case control. Sawa. We have 10 minutes, and then I know there are 2 groups of each. I'm going to randomly pick one to present, so everybody better prepare. If you end up not presenting, you'll be critiquing the other team's presentation. Like if there's something they missed out, you can add to it. So let's move. Number 1s are here.
Okay. All right. Morning. So, we started we divided it into three parts. So there was the methodology, and then the respondents, and then we introduced biases into our study. So the we divided, since we're doing in a population, we divided our population into either urban or rural, because we tend to think that more people in the urban areas will tend to use diapers for their kids as compared to the rural areas. And then, since there are no, we think or not have heard of data where kids actually register their penile length, or yes, in this case. So there was need for primary data collection, and this we specifically targeted the circumcision hospitals, or yes. So when a mother or a family brings their child into the hospital, they will be asked, do you use diapers or don't you use diapers? And then from there, we can get our initial source of data for our study. And then, so penile length is not really directly associated to the use of diapers, so there was bias in terms of what nutrition is this child exposed to, and also the social economic status of that particular family.
One of the disadvantage we identified is that is the recall bias, because the respondents will be the parent of the child, and remembering the number of diapers that they used in a single day could be a challenge. Yeah.
I think just to add, the study question was, is there an association between diaper use and average penile length among boys in different regions of Kenya? So that was the main question we were trying to answer in this study.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something to bring up, which is a problem with ecological studies. And the number one thing they brought up is lack of data. That yes, you want to do the ecological study, but is there data on penile length? Now they took it a step further. They said they wanted to go and collect data. They are not supposed to do that. Huh? So now they're going into a different study design. Ecological, the moment you now want to start collecting data, so are you doing a cross-sectional, like what, that's a different study, yeah? So for ecological, you said you're going to divide your population into urban, rural, and then check penile length at a certain time, whatever it is, yeah? Some of your shortcomings was a lack of data. Now, this urban and rural, before I continue, group one, do you want to add anything? Let you use it. Is there anything missing that you would like to add?
In terms of when you're recruiting the study participants, we thought maybe we look at the economic status of the parents.
The what?
Economic status,
Okay.
because there are situations where there are those that can afford to use consistently, those that cannot use throughout. Then also nutrition condition of the study participants. We want to look into that also. The genes,
Okay.
and also we'll want to compare. We have different communities in Kenya, those that circumcise and those that don't. So we'll also want to compare
Okay.
from those. And then also age of circumcision, because we know the children develop over time. So for those who circumcise at younger age and those that do at an advanced age, will there be some difference? Yes.
Very good. What I'm hearing from group one is they're expanding on the potential confounders. So as you're doing your ecological study, you have data on length is let's say shorter, yeah? Are we sure that everybody in that urban area is using diapers, yeah? Even if we were to say, let's say, so let's say here is diaper usage, and then here is penile length, and then we say in this particular sub-county, if we had the data, they had, oh, it should be the other way, yeah? So they used more diapers, and then the penile length was shorter. Are we sure that it is actually the person who used diapers is the one that had the shorter penile length? Because we're not collecting individual level data. So that's what we call the ecological fallacy. We take these assumptions we've made about grouped data and try and assume that it is what has affected this particular person. Where it could be in urban areas, there could be more diaper usage, but also poorer nutritional practices, and we also know if BMI is too high, then it can have an effect on penile length or something like that. So ecological studies can give us a hint that there's something there, but as to whether we can rely on the results of ecological studies to tell us, yes, increased diaper use is associated with this, we cannot, yeah? So now the next is, what is the next one? Cross-sectional analytic. So well done to group 1 and 5. You've seen the limitations of ecological, finding that data is tough. So now we'll say, let's go look for that data. Who was doing cross-sectional group number 2? So group 2, please quickly present, and then group number 6, you'll add on. Just a missing one, whatever they've missed.
Hi everyone. Now the first step this lecture, and then cross-sectional deals with exposure and outcome at the same time. And then we went ahead, looked at the steps for setting up a cross-sectional study. And then the first step would be identifying a target population. What did we agree on as a group? We said we want boys from age 0 to 5 years. And that may form part of our inclusion criteria for data collection. So again, for inclusion criteria, we would have to have consent. And since they are minors, we would talk to the parents. And then if they give us consent, we go ahead to collect whatever we need, the data. Exclusion criteria would be if the boy has any congenital condition that may exclude already, let's say, the penile size is already yeah. Yeah. The third thing is sampling. And in sampling, we have to, we said random selection would be ideal in this case. And then the sample size would be 100. Now we are looking at participants who are, N, our N is 100. Now, that's another part I was going in. Yesterday we talked about prevalence, and then we would use prevalence to come up with that size. Okay. Yeah. Let's not go deeper in it. We only had 10 minutes. Okay, so maybe, yeah.
The advantages. Okay. As you can see, it is a cross-sectional where you don't need much time to do it. You just go at that particular time. and also it is sometimes cheap because you can identify the population at ease and you can conduct your study. So disadvantage is recall bias, because you may ask a parent who may report about the child, but again, as you can realize, this data might also misinform in that the penile may not be directly correlated with the diaper use.
Yeah, and, something we can also add about the cross-sectional study, because it was an analytical cross-sectional study. You also test an hypothesis, like there is no association between use of diapers and the penile length among boys 0 to 5 years in Kenya. So another thing we gathered as this group, we could be able to identify the variables whereby we categorize and then we divided them at dependent, the outcome, which was the penile length, and then independent, like use of diapers, whereby we have maybe the frequency and the length of duration, as well as other factors that may also be associated with the penile length, like nutritional lifestyle during the development stages of the boys. Yeah, the advantage that was not added by group 2, we can also add it that in this study, you can also study multiple variables, can be studied and analyzed, as well as the disadvantage is like, because it is this kind of study, the cross-sectional study, it is done at a point in time, like a study period of within 6 months or 1 year, that study period, then you cannot study the changes over time. Yeah, thank you.
Really well done to group 2 and 6. So one of the which group 6 mentioned is the concern with cross-sectional studies. Sometimes you cannot be sure about the temporal relationship between exposure and outcome, because now you're seeing a child today, they are wearing a diaper, they have a short penile length. You don't know which one came first, yeah? As opposed to a different type of study where you could follow them, you make sure they were okay first, then you follow them and see what happens, okay? Sample size, very important. I think there'll be a practical on how you calculate it, but knowing what our research question is, then our sample size needs to be determined based on what we want to achieve. Yeah? And group 2 also raised an important point about how you sample. If you don't sample well, let's say you just go, I'm going to go sample children in Nairobi Hospital. You know, that's not representative of Nairobi. Yeah. So there has to be a proper sampling technique to make sure that whoever you enrolled in the study is representative of the general population. If you sample from Nairobi Hospital, then your study is representative of people who visit Nairobi Hospital. It is not representative of Nairobi. And then Cosmas mentioned something about remembering, and also I think group 6. Let's say we go to this household. The boy is 5 years old. He stopped using diapers 3 years ago. Mom can't remember how many times she used to change the diaper. She can't remember how long he stayed with it. Those sort of things. So in a cross-sectional study, sometimes if you're looking for an exposure that happened a while back, yeah, because you're just asking somebody, they might not recall it well. So for example, if you're looking, let's say to a lung cancer, we're doing a study on lung cancer, and you're asking somebody, they have lung cancer, and you're asking them, how much do you smoke? They'll be like, well, I stopped smoking in my 30s, and I used to smoke maybe 5 cigarettes a day. But can you really remember? Yeah? Maybe it was 10, maybe it was 1 pack, all of that. So well done to group 2 and 6. Now, group 3, if you could please present on Group 3 is cohort? Or is this case control? I'm so confused. Cohort. Okay, so group 3. Who is group 3? Okay. And where is group 7? Okay.
Yes, so group 3, we are presenting on cohort, which is an observational study. So the question was to assess whether disposable diapers used in infancy is associated with a reduced penile size, but this is the question I have to ask before I proceed with the study. Like, is there a specific length or average length of a penile that we might equate? Because
those are some of the challenges, yes? Yeah, what is normal? What is average? Yeah? So tell us, you just proceed. Let's proceed.
so this is how we designed the study. In population, the target was majorly a group of boys, maybe between the age of 5 to 10. Then the inclusion criteria was boys with documented use of diapers during infancy. Then exclusion criteria was boys with congenital medical conditions. So on exposure classification, we classified boys based on exposed groups and unexposed groups. So for exposed groups, those are boys who use disposable diapers regularly during their infancy. And an exposed group, those are boys who never use diapers. Maybe they used nappies or they didn't use at all. So for the outcome, the primary outcome, we were checking on the penile size. And maybe on secondary outcome, we are interested in urological issues. And then from there, we had a follow-up for the study. So I think we were now specifying the period before you cut it. We cut us off for the 10 minutes time. So one of the main limitation I have to mention is I think based on different factors, because I tend to assume that there might be a variation in the length of a penile, let's say based on the genetic factors for a given community, race. So this study might have the main challenges are now coming up with the average penile range that we might equate to now the normal size of so an advantage of the study, observational study, is you can actually cover a wide range of population, and it can also include different criteria during, let's say, different factors that you can target during your study.
You need to be more precise. What do you mean you can cover larger population? What do you mean by that?
Assuming your population is maybe covering, let's say, a country, you maybe maybe I can.
Okay, maybe to add on the disadvantage side, we found out that cohort studies are time-consuming and expensive, because we are supposed to make a follow-up maybe, and maybe you have done in a certain region, you are supposed to go back and maybe get another sample, do that cohort, so it's time-consuming and expensive. But one of the advantages is that you can study multiple outcomes, yes, using the cohort study. Yes. Okay, and sorry, and the last one, there's some clarity of the sequence when you are doing the cohort studies, because you are studying a huge cohort. So there's some sequence and some patterns you'll be able to deduce from those cohorts. Yes.
Okay. Yes. That you are sure that the exposure came before the outcome.
Yes.
Okay. Well done. This is group 7. Okay. Anything to add?
I do the whole?
No, just the things that
Oh,
are
the-
unique, things that differ from theirs, not repetition.
Or different?
Yeah.
For us, we decided to have kids newborn kids, selection for the ones who are between 0 to 1 month. And our study period was 3 years, but we were doing collection of data every 6 months. So we decided to ensure the parents will have certain diaper change or diaper use protocols.
Oh, so now you're informing the parents
How
to
to-
use the diapers.
Yes.
What does that sound like now? Sounds like
Oh,
intervention. If you were telling the parents just to record how they use their diapers, that's observational. But once you start telling parents, change your diapers every 4 hours, do this, sounds a bit.
Okay. A disadvantage, I don't know if they mentioned, but there is a chance we'll have loss of follow-up with the group we've decided to do the study with. I think that's it.
Maybe to add on one more thing, maybe the point of departure with our colleagues. Like us, we were starting before, so at infancy, and I saw they started at around 5 to 10, because the assumption by that time we would have already realized that there is a problem, so the outcome will already be there. So that's why for us we decided to start picking them, those who are using diapers from that early age, and those not using diapers. And as my colleague said, we follow them like to 3 years or so, just around the time that we normally stop using diapers, and then now look at the kids. For those that were using diapers, how many had the normal penile size, and how many had less than normal size, and also those who are now not using diapers, how many had normal penile size, and how many had less than normal penile size.
Very well done. And both groups are both using cohort studies, but different types of cohort studies. So cohort studies, you could start off with, as they did, somebody is newborn, has not been exposed, and then you follow them up for the outcome. And somebody could argue, when is the best time to measure that outcome? Is it at 5 years? Is it at 15 years? Is it at 25 years? So let's imagine for this, let's say it's 25 years, because let's assume people stop growing around that time. I think it's that anyway, 25 years. So in your case, you're starting from infancy, because I can imagine a parent may be worried about their 8-year-old boy, but turns out in puberty, things go well, and so maybe the final outcome will be in adulthood. But in your case, they are starting off children, clean slates, and you're following them up, yeah? Because maybe this effect, we'll see it in adulthood, yeah. But now these guys, they've taken a shortcut, because that's a long time. That's 25 years. So there's also the option of using we call it a historical cohort. So you find people, so now they found this group of young boys, not infants, and then looked back to see their usage of diapers, then followed them up till the age of 25 to see what the penile length is. So the advantage of that is it saved time. The disadvantage is the record on nappy use, diaper use, will not be as good as yours. Because yours is prospective, and you're following the parents and asking them, let's say every week they kept a diary, they're telling you, this is how I used it. This one, they may have to be asking, yeah, which is not as accurate, unless there was a place those mothers maybe were recording their diaper usage or whatever, quantity used or whatever. So that's really well done. You've described normal cohort and historical cohorts. There's also the issue of information bias. So it could be that as we are following up these boys, you notice, let's say one who is obese. So the one who is obese, even the way you measure is different. Because maybe you're predisposed to a certain way of thinking. That, oh, if somebody is obese, then let's say their penile length will be less. Yeah. So there is a difference in the quality of information you get based on somebody's characteristics. And it could also be based on their exposure. So if you knew these babies just grew up with diapers, you might even be asking questions in adulthood. Oh, are you having problems with dysfunction? Maybe he just said, but now you probe it. And you're like, yeah, that time, kumbe it was a passing thing. Yet the person who used nappies, and they said, let's say you ask them a question, do you have, let's say, erectile dysfunction? And they paused in the same way, but you didn't probe it. Because you didn't have a bias, you had a bias towards people who used diapers. So that's the problem with cohort studies. We mentioned loss to follow up. Yes, Ricky?
How do you do sampling in a cohort study? You said in a cross-sectional, you can sample, and then it's not a representative of the whole population. Is it the same?
Okay, so also for cohort studies, based on your question, you determine your sample size and your inclusion criteria. So when you pick your people to fall in the cohort, you're aiming for a certain number. And how you pick them isn't going to be the same. You see, cross-sectional study, it's random sampling. If you're not doing random, it's stratified, whatever it is. But for cohort, if somebody meets your inclusion criteria, then you just keep on collecting them as they come along. Yeah. So you need to be careful in the sense that what do you want to generalize to? I can imagine if you do a cohort study and you're only enrolling people from affluent neighborhoods, then you can't speak to the whole of Kenya. So I think you also need to be careful, but the cohort studies that we found that people talk about is like there's a doctor's cohort study, a nurse's cohort study. In Kisian, there's the Kenya Demographic Health Survey, which could be, no, not KDHS, KHS, yeah? Kenya Health Surveillance something. The one that they do in, what is it? Assemble? Yeah. So it's a group, a community. It's HDSS. Health? Demographic? Yes. So that one, they've taken like a whole community and they're following them up. They've been following them up for the last couple of years. We have the same in several places across Africa. So that community that was picked, I think is like the average community in Kenya. Like we wouldn't go to Runda, then pick those people and think that the observations we get from there could be useful to or generalizable to the whole of the country. Yeah. So what was mentioned was multiple outcomes can be assessed. Very good, that's the advantage. We've talked about the time it takes, the likelihood of loss to follow up, which is a problem with cohort studies, and historical cohort. Now we all know how a historical cohort is done. Now, I think we move to group 8 with group 4 listening in. Who is 8? Okay. Oh, you are 4? No, you are 8.
Okay, so we are answering the question was, does use of diapers reduce penile length among boys in Kenya? So we took our case study to be Kiambu based on where the complaint came from. So our study design is case control. The exposure is the diaper use, and the outcome is the reduction in the penile length. So in terms of our steps for the case control, we first recruit. We are to recruit individuals, and specifically those are going to be males, because according to the question. Then the next we group the males into, we group them by age. So here we are interested in individuals who are between age of 12 to 15, informed by the age at which the residents in Kiambu County circumcised their males. Then the next step was to group the males according to penile size. So here we have a grouping of 2. We have males with the normal penile size, and we'll have males with a short penile size. And for the grouping, will depend on the records from the elders conducting circumcision in that community. Then the next step, the fourth step, was to ask the care providers of children if they use the diapers. So for this step, we will use a questionnaire or also a form of interview. So for this one, for this study, for this design, we will have an hypothesis. So the H0 will be diaper use does not directly correlate with short penile, and the alternative hypothesis is true.
We have several advantages of using the case study. The first advantage that we found that it will be we'll be able to focus on real life content, and we also be able to get in-depth understanding after conducting the study. And the study can be flexible depending on the case study that you're taking on that during that time.
Okay. Anything else?
So on the disadvantage, one of them would be the recall bias, where the mothers may not be able to remember whether they were using the diapers appropriately or continuously. And then the selection bias, because we are going to base our boys with the short and long penile length based on we are going to get this data from the traditional circumcisers, those guys who are conducting the circumcision. So they could be biased with that.
In how they select the cases?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, can I hear from group 4? Anything to add?
Thank you. I think a number of things are similar with what we discussed, but I have just a small concern. The issue of relying on data from traditional circumcisers, I don't know what kind of medical data they keep that might bias the study. And one strength of a case control study relies on a proper description of the outcome. So if we do not define our outcome well, and defining may mean including the source of information. So for our group, we considered medical records, basing on the fact that a clinician or a clinical setting may give us a proper definition of penile length that is short, that is considered short based on existing clinical guidelines as compared to alternative sources, maybe like the traditional circumcisers. They may give us other informations, but not one that may describe that. Another advantage I would add, apart from what has been stated, is that just like cohort studies, also the possibility of studying, now the opposite, multiple outcomes. So for this, you can study multiple exposures, and then also the cost-effective nature of case control studies has been highlighted, and I think I can leave it there.
Well done. So these two groups brought about the issue of like, where do you get your cases, where do you get your controls from? And we've heard about the story of, or the issue of, you can pick controls from the population, you can pick them from the hospital, even cases, you can identify them from a hospital, or you could identify them from the community. But I know for their group, even though you are getting it from the traditional circumcisers, even as you enroll, you would have you'd have your own measurement to then say, yes, this child qualifies as a case, yes. So it's just, I think they were just using it as a means of identifying. Now, this issue of controls is an important one, yeah? So what they say is, if you picked your cases from the hospital, pick your controls from the hospital. So for you, you looked at medical records, you found children where it said they have a problem. So for your controls, also get them from that hospital. And you guys went into the community, so also get your controls. Because sometimes if we pick the wrong controls, we can lead to wrong assumptions. Because if you picked your cases from the health facility, but your controls from the community, those conclusions you reach could be influenced by healthcare seeking behavior. Because the people who go to hospital may not be the same as those who stay in the community. So just to be wise about defining your source of cases and your source of controls. You mentioned that the case definition has to be exact in case control studies, which is true. You have to have a very precise case definition to make sure the right person is there. Otherwise, you're watering down your results. There's also, if you wanted to increase the power of your study, then you could, for every case, you have 2 or more controls. So that if there is a difference, when you do the analysis, it comes out more strongly than if you just picked one case, one control. And experience has shown is, once you go beyond 4 controls per case, there's not much of a benefit. So we just stick to 1 to 1, but maximum 1 to 4. So a nested case control study is, a nested case control study happens within a cohort. So these guys who are doing the cohorts, let's say they were just following up children. As soon as, let's say they hit 25, and then they said, well, this man, I think it's reduced penile length. They could pick him as a case, then look back in the records to see his nappy usage, because they've been following them up for 25 years. That's a nested case control study. So that's a different type of case control nested within a cohort. So it gives, there's a benefit to it, because a cohort was already running and you come in and you're assured of good collection of data because the cohort started earlier. I just want to state about sometimes if we are looking at something like breast cancer, ideally when you're doing a case control for breast cancer, you want to do cases of, let's say, newly diagnosed breast cancer as cases, and then you pick controls. Now, if you just go and get any breast cancer, the thing is, there are people who get breast cancer and die very soon, and then there are people who get breast cancer and live a long time. So normally if you go get, if you're enrolling for a case looking at risk factors for breast cancer, and you just pick any breast cancer, maybe this woman has survived with breast cancer for 20 years, yeah? And so when you do the analysis, what you're picking out is risk factors associated with survival of breast cancer. But if you picked newly diagnosed breast cancer, then maybe what you pick out is risk factors associated with, the risk of developing cancer, not the risk, the probability of surviving with cancer. Okay, so I think that's about it. Very well done. I think you've talked very well about the advantages, how you can study multiple risk factors, but also you can study rare diseases, because you can imagine you have a cohort of 10,000 people, and you're looking for a very rare disease. What if none of them develop it? But with the case control study, you're starting with that disease. So you'll make sure you'll have the numbers. Okay, I think that's very well done for group work. I'm just going to quickly summarize, and then we go for tea. Now, just so that we are on the same page, the people who have done this, please don't answer. There's a study to investigate the effects of air pollution on infant mortality. National infant mortality rates in 2023 were plotted against air pollution in the same year for 15 countries. What is this study design? It's a what? Ecological. Well done. Say it with. What's the primary outcome? I'm just rushing through. Infant mortality. The exposure. Okay, this one we didn't do, but measure of disease occurrence is the infant mortality rate. Yeah. So cross-sectional studies, a reminder from yesterday, you start with your population, gather data on exposure and outcomes. Yeah, you have 4 possible outcomes. Yeah, people are either exposed, not exposed, or have the disease, don't have the disease. Remember the table? What's the prevalence of exposure in the diseased? A over prevalence of exposure among those with disease is A over A plus C. Prevalence of the exposure amongst those who are diseased. Who are diseased? Who? A plus C. Who has exposure amongst the disease? Yes. Okay, prevalence of exposure in the non-diseased. B over? Okay, prevalence of disease in the exposed. Okay, and prevalence of disease in the unexposed. Okay, a reminder just on cross-sectional, we have point prevalence, we also have period prevalence. So prevalence is about new and existing cases. If we are just doing a study now, PAP, that's point prevalence. But you know, we could do a study over 1 year and talk about the proportion of people who had malaria in that year. Yeah, and to get the denominator for that, we use the mid-population of that year. And then prevalence ratio is prevalence of disease or outcome in the exposed versus prevalence of disease in the unexposed. Quickly, if we can calculate this, what is the prevalence ratio? Who is Purity? Okay, Purity, please answer for us. There's a hint. So prevalence ratio is prevalence of disease or outcome in the exposed, prevalence of disease, outcome in the unexposed. So in this one, so we'd say prevalence of, let's say, smoking in males over prevalence of smoking in females. So 33 divided by 3, we get 8. So men are 8.7 times more likely to smoke than women in this population. Sawa? Okay, now I want to ask, Mwema, should I stop now? We go for tea, and then Nani gives me 5 minutes to conclude. Yes. Okay, so let's stop now for tea.